afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fourth in our series of webinars from the National Clinical Research Network on Emerging Drugs. And this webinar series is hosted in collaboration with two of our consortium members, the St Vincent's Hospital in Sydney and the National Drug and Alcohol Research Centre, also in Sydney. This series of webinars is aimed at consumers, clinicians, families, everyone concerned with alcohol and drugs at the moment in this space of COVID-19. As we're in the COVID-19 response and as we're emerging from it, we've had such profound shifts in the way that we relate to drugs and alcohol, and also in the way that we deliver care to people who are seeking care for drugs and alcohol. And so we wanted to explore some of those things with a range of different speakers, so clinicians, researchers, and consumers. And today I'm really happy to be joined by Jack Nagle, who's the founder of Realdrugtalk. He's also a member of the Australian National Advisory Council on Alcohol and Drugs. He is also a member of our own National Clinical Research Network working group. He is an expert and a leader in the field and is well known for his speaking engagements. He's a former treatment centre manager and counsellor and mentor. And I will hand over to Jack to explain a little bit more about him and his life before we move on to some of the questions about what is happening to us as humans and our relationship with drugs and our use of drugs and alcohol during this kind of odd time of social isolation.
No worries. Thanks, Nadine. Yeah, and we were actually just saying before we came on that, well, still to this day, hearing a bio just kind of irks me. I don't know why. I like hearing other people's, but not my own. So yeah, basically I became interested in the alcohol and other drugs sector space, because of my own personal experience with drugs and alcohol and addiction, and how that changed my whole life. And I'm not sure if you kind of want me to go into that now, or we'll flesh it out as the
Talk a little bit about yourself, maybe, and your own experience. That would be useful, I think.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So and look, it's really it's driven everything that I've kind of done. So I've been in recovery from addiction for nearly 9 years now. And it has completely changed the course of my life, getting help and getting treatment, and drives a lot of, I suppose, what I want to do in the space and how I want to help and things like that. So basically my story is, to kind of give the short snapshot version is, I suppose I come from like a very middle class, average family. Look, every family has issues, and I do tell my story in media and in these forums a lot. And I do just out of respect, because some of my family members are still obviously around and watch what I do and things like that. Out of respect for them, I sort of don't touch on some of the issues that happen within my family. But in the grand scheme of things, I think, I came from a pretty good family and was brought up really well. And probably had everything I ever needed, maybe not everything I ever wanted, but was naturally kind of good at sport as well. So I'm sitting down at the moment, but I'm 6'6", and I have always been really tall, and as a result wasn't very keen on school, but it was just really into sport, mainly AFL footy, and broke my jaw and then got into basketball. Did quite well as a junior, did lots of cool stuff. I don't like to kind of say that, I potentially could have gone professional, I suppose, with where I was, but I don't really like to say that, because you don't want to be that guy that said, oh, I used to be good or whatever. But definitely as a junior, I had opportunities to take my sporting ambitions into the professional space, and went to America, and people like Andrew Gaze was my coach and things like that. So but at exactly the same time as all of that, I just had this kind of underlying drug use going on in the background. And at that stage of my life, I suppose, so I was it started for me, drug use, just having fun and a social thing at probably like 15, but it didn't really affect anything that I was doing. There's probably a couple of things that I realized now. Definitely the amount of sport that I was playing, like it was intense. I was sort of training twice a day, 5 days a week, and training every other day, once a week as well. So it was a full-on 7-day thing. And at the time, in hindsight, I realized that I really felt like I was missing out on my teenage years and all that stuff. So I think that played a big part, because when I got any opportunity to go out and party and have fun, like I really kind of went for it. Yeah, I was kind of out there as a kid. When I look back on it, I was kind of polite and shy and stuff, but I was very willing to take a lot of risks and do a lot of stuff that, you know, was kind of pushing the boundaries and putting myself in danger and stuff. And I think a lot of that stuff played into my alcohol and drug use. But basically, as I started using more and more, I realized that it really changed the way that I thought about myself and my life, I guess. And I made a really out of character decision after coming back from America and probably experiencing my first detox and, you know, different things like that. I was quite naive. I didn't really know what was going on. I decided that I didn't want to play sport anymore. And, you know, I was just going to party and have fun. And, so I just dropped all my life commitments, didn't have a job or anything like that, and just proceeded to kind of get into drug and alcohol use. And it was largely still fun, but it was kind of starting to get intense. I was changing the drugs that I was using. You know, I kind of say hanging out with people that wanted to use drugs the way I wanted to use drugs. And I think when I look back on it, the one thing that really is evident in my life and in drug use, and I've seen it with a lot of other people as well, is that every time I started sort of pushing the boundaries of what was kind of, I suppose, acceptable for me. You know, so for instance, when I first started smoking ice, I thought, no way am I ever going to use needles. Like, I remember having that thought, and I would say that all the time. But then just as you kind of progress into it, and the more you associate yourself in that scene, the more normal it becomes. And by the time it got around to me actually, using intravenously and trying other drugs and stuff like that, it was normal, because that was the scene that I was in, and I didn't really kind of see it as that bad of an issue. As funny as that sounds, even though everything in my life was kind of getting more and more crazy. And for me, I guess kind of jumping forward, just as a demonstration of kind of where I ended up, I used ice. When I started using, it was bad when I was smoking, but it got worse when I was intravenously using, and it was more the other consequences, not so much the using itself, that pushed me into wanting to stop. And I actually wanted to stop a long time before I did stop. So I had, at the end, I was regularly going into psychosis, and I just always like to state as well, like genuine psychosis, because I would black out and not remember anything, and people would tell me that I was doing all sorts of mad stuff, and then I just had that underlying thing all the time of talking to myself walking down the street, and this was 21, and then I was really skinny, so when I checked into rehab, I was 64 kilos, and that's not, I really remember that. People don't believe me, but I remember, because the doctor was kind of freaking out, and he was giving me, I don't know why, but he was giving me protein supplements, and they were giving me like nutrient supplements, because they wanted me to put some weight on and, I guess, replenish nutrients and stuff like that. But because I just wasn't eating really, and it wasn't bothering me too much, and I had suicide attempts. I really kind of hit the bottom of the barrel, and that's the stuff that pushed me to eventually reach out for help and get it. There's lots of stuff around that I think is interesting to talk about, that we can, just in terms of what kind of happened to me in my mind, and actually wanting to get help and then not wanting to get help and all that stuff. I got introduced to, I was very lucky, as I said, mum had kind of taken out private health insurance, and I still fell underneath her private health insurance at that age. And I think she took it out like 6 months before I got help, because she could really see me deteriorating. And I managed to go to a private rehab for 30 days. And that's what really helped me I think initially, not so much, like the rehab didn't really help, to be honest, for 30 days because I was just crazy and my brain was everywhere and I couldn't really, like in hindsight, I couldn't really take on any of the concepts that they were talking to me about. I was just dealing with the underlying paranoia and all that stuff. But what did happen there was that all the staff were also kind of, they said that they were in recovery and they had different stories to me and stuff, but they talked to me about how they felt when they went through addiction. And I don't know, there was something about that really helped me and sort of helped me to kind of trust that maybe things could get better because I'd never really seen anyone change their life. And the thing that then really helped me is that I went to a program in Melbourne, which was for youth, called Shark, and was able to stay there for 2 years in kind of like it's like a supportive housing arrangement. But within that, they have kind of like a home base that you go into daily, and there was workers there, and they wouldn't so much do counselling, but they would more help you to just get on top of your life, like case management and stuff like that. And that really helped because I kind of was encouraged to go back and do study and, just socialize with other people that were going through the same stuff. And I kind of started to get my self-esteem back. A lot of things like that happened. And my life changed, and I sort of decided that, I wanted to keep going with it and do something different. And luckily enough, touch wood, I've never gone back. So, and it's been a really cool experience. And then there's been lots of stuff that happened. I got into basically wanting to help other people because of my experience, and started working in rehabs. And then, it's just been such an awesome journey to like learn all this different stuff and be able to be put in contact with like researchers and
Find some of the skills and personal attributes that you just described, like risk taking and pushing boundaries, and some of the other skills that you got from several years of engaged in a very drug focused lifestyle. Have you found some of those characteristics that are very useful in your new life, if you like?
Yeah, 100%. So, and that was something that I was kind of taught, that if I could channel it into something, I guess positive, that, I could have lots of success. So, it's been cool. Like I sort of find, I don't know if it's true or not, but I find that I'm naturally kind of obsessive and like to be creative and bold and, all those kind of things. So, I didn't really know what I liked. And I found out along the way in the last 9 years that I really like business. I've started lots of different businesses in different industries and, done e-commerce, hospitality. We had a cafe for a while, done some stuff in healthcare. And been quite successful in a couple of those. So, and I definitely attribute some of the characteristics. People have said that to me, and my now wife says that to me as well. Like, it really is almost like, you get addicted to things when you're interested in them. You just get really into it. That's right. Yeah.
So tell us a bit about Realdrugtalk then.
Yeah. So what happened with Realdrugtalk was, it's kind of interesting, and I don't actually talk about it now. I'm only just starting to talk about what was happening at the time, but I actually was kind of very naive. I went and did my just basic qualifications, and then went and did a placement at a private rehab in Melbourne, and like that's a whole discussion that I've spoken to you about, Nadine, before. But it was really interesting because I learned a whole lot of stuff, and it was great in a lot of ways. But it was quite a strange experience as well, and helped me to kind of form my identity and realize what I kind of stand for as a person, I guess, because as I started to progress, there was quite a few things happening within that even though I was doing really well in the organization, that just weren't sitting with me right. And I actually ended up going to New York and leaving that job, because while I was there, one of the things that happened was that I sort of told my story to the Herald Sun. I don't know, is that a national newspaper or is that just in Melbourne?
It's a Victorian paper, but I think it's syndicated into other
Right. So anyway, it was when the whole ice thing happened and I told my story and they like plastered me all over the front page of the newspaper. And then I did all this media and it was quite an experience, but um, and there's a whole lot of stuff around that. But the one thing that did happen was that I literally had like, it was nearly like we counted them. It was nearly 2,000 people message me personally on Facebook and just say like, wow, I'd never heard that kind of story before. And it was when it was all kind of very new and all that crazy media was going on around ice. And it was the very start of it. So, and I was really taken aback at how kind of, I guess, sharing my story, you know, could potentially help and impact people. So yeah, then when I left work, I didn't really know what I was going to do, but so I started Realdrugtalk, and the whole idea of it to start with was to try and, I guess, champion personal stories of recovery and share people's personal experience. And it's morphed and changed so much over the years. And we've actually just gone back to doing that. So yeah, but yeah, and I guess that continued to allow me to do different bits of media and just really the focus was to try and change the perception around drug users and yeah, how they're viewed and how the story's told in media as well.
And so during this COVID time, which had suddenly introduced a whole range of changes for us,
Yeah.
much more socially isolated, there's concerns about disruptions to drug supply, there's concerns around what's happening to people. Are they using more or less? Are they at home wanting to get high all the time, or are they not using as much because they're having less social contact? So what kind of things are you seeing? Are people contacting you with new stories? Or
Yeah, so really interesting couple of things, and all of this kind of stuff's anecdotal, but definitely in April, we saw a 200% increase in the amount of people hitting our website, which was crazy. So there was nearly, and we do some advertising, but on average, we would only kind of have about 60 users come to our website a day. And in April, we had it was like nearly 300 people a day hitting the website, which was crazy. And so with that, a lot of people reaching out, and we actually started a little Facebook group that a few people signed into just to, I don't know, because there were so many people saying that they were struggling, you know, with using in this time and the isolation, their mental health and stuff. So, and the things that people have kind of been saying to us through the website is just that with illicit drugs, that things were okay through April, but the last 2 weeks I've had a couple of people say to me that they're struggling to get supply of the drugs. And, you know, again, that's all anecdotal for them. And that's kind of presenting challenges and stuff like that, obviously. That the main concern is around like the financial side of things and the isolation and just the whole environment. But I've heard a lot of positive stuff as well through you know, services and things like that, but just people as well. Like there's a lot of people, because I don't know if it's my age demographic, I love technology, and I think the one positive thing that's going to come out of COVID is like the forcing the alcohol and drug sector to kind of get in the 21st century. And yeah, so, and I've had a lot of people tell me that they really like, some people don't like it. I guess it depends what stage you're at, but they really like phone consults and online consults because it just reduces like their anxiety. So I guess in some ways it's increased engagement in services and stuff. So that's some of the stuff we're hearing. Yeah.
So what kind of interventions can you suggest to people? I mean, you mentioned some of the online stuff. So are people finding that GPs or drug and alcohol services are moving to online, and that makes it a lower threshold entry for people? I mean, what kind of services are kind of good for people?
So I guess the main one that people have kind of been saying is probably more like telehealth stuff, and it's probably more specifically with direct alcohol and drug services, and just sort of saying that they don't feel as, it's not as daunting to kind of go somewhere, look someone in the face and tell their story. But the main one that people have actually been saying, and that I've just been seeing because I'm a part of the different groups, and I don't know whether it's good or bad because it's very much a community thing and there's probably not a lot of professionals, but just the uptake of like Facebook groups, and people joining those Facebook groups, sharing what's going on, people supporting each other, really, really interesting. So they're kind of the main two places. And I'm not really sure. It'd be interesting to see, like, I don't know. I know it's only in hindsight, but data come out around like GPs and pharmacotherapy. I'm a bit worried about that. Different stuff that happens, for people.
Yeah. So, I mean, you just mentioned that you're worried about pharmacotherapy. Is that something that people have been communicating with you, or it's just a general?
Yeah, definitely. Like and maybe it's changing now because I know in most states they're starting to lift some of the restrictions and stuff. But definitely, people had massive anxiety around accessing GPs to get changes in prescriptions, or just being able to get to the chemist and get their prescriptions with all the added kind of stuff going on. The sort of fear that a few people had that communicated to me about holding on to their not wanting to hold on to takeaways, because they don't want to use them all at once, and things like that. Just more the anxiety around it, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So, because one of the fears we've heard is that because there's such mistrust in the system, that should the healthcare system be overwhelmed, that people getting pharmacotherapy their needs won't be met, that there'll be disruption to their pharmacotherapy supply. So that's an anxiety that is understandable.
Definitely.
We're saying also that with the sort of more liberal takeaway regimen, that comes with its own risks for some people, that they're concerned that they won't be able to manage them.
That's right. That's right. So and so it's kind of that double-edged sword. That's what people have been saying, that they're sort of worried, not trusting the system, worried that, and maybe thinking about stockpiling a little bit or getting a bunch of takeaways. I shouldn't say stockpiling, but and then but then also the anxiety of, because that's been my experience in talking to 85% of people that are anecdotally that are on pharmacotherapies, that they actually want to do the right thing and follow their regimen, but they don't trust themselves and all that stuff. So
isn't that kind of the definition of dependence? I remember I'm going to probably misquote one of my colleagues that I worked with once, and he said that he at the time he was dependent on heroin. He said if he had enough heroin for the morning, and he'd line up his fit on top of his bed head, and he had enough there for the morning, so he knew he wouldn't go into withdrawal in the morning. He couldn't sleep because he knew it was there. And then if he used it, then he couldn't sleep because he knew he didn't have any there. So that's too, that you feel caught in most of the time.
That's right. 100%. And that's like, just, I never had drug replacement therapies or anything like that, but that's when I was going to rehab, that was or trying to get help and change things. Like, I wanted my life to be different so bad, but then in the moment of like those first kind of couple of days after I decided and committed to go, I'd get up the next morning and not want to go, and like, it was just a nightmare. So yeah.
So just before, you said one of the ways of dealing with increased social isolation is to find connection on Facebook. We've got a question from one of our listeners who asks if you worry about privacy on online platforms like Facebook.
Yeah, like 100. Yeah, of course. I think I don't. Well, there's lots of issues around, I guess, like, the overall privacy issues with Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg in those Senate hearings and all that stuff that comes along with that. But it definitely, like, I think probably sometimes people enter those Facebook groups and maybe don't realize the permissions around who can see posts and stuff. And, I've definitely had a lot of people that have joined our Facebook groups in the past about, if they post, who can see it, who else is in the group. all that kind of stuff. So I definitely think there's been some issues with that, and there is some issues with that, but there's probably more upside as well than there is downside. And it's just the nature of it. Like, I know there's a few other forums that are really good for people to kind of go that are more secure, I guess you could say. But people just tend to be on social media, don't they? So it's just an easy place for them to find the groups and stuff like that. One of the things that I see in there actually that annoys me is, I don't know, like private professionals or providers in there trying to, scalp clients. That's a real thing. Like, and I'm like, come on, like, just leave it alone.
So there's someone who joins as a member and then says, "Oh, if you want some help."
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's the big thing that happens. Like, they'll join these kind of online groups and just sort of watch for different posts and then contact people and, say, "Oh, well, we can help you," and try and book them in for a session or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I've just got another question. Do you feel like there's a long-term future for other online platforms too? For example, online smart recovery groups or online NA meetings, for example, or do you think this alienates people who don't have access or who perhaps don't have the correct environment in which to access to engage online in these types of programs? So it's that kind of balance between increased and decreased accessibility, if you like.
Yeah. So I'm a big advocate for the online stuff. I think it's awesome, but I also strongly kind of, it's always the most vulnerable people that get left out, in my opinion. And definitely it creates barriers for the most vulnerable client populations, 100%, that don't have access to technology, or older populations. Alcohol's a massive population. They might not be native to different technology platforms and stuff. So I'm really interested because I think online stuff is really helpful and really works, and can work for people. And I'm really interested for more evidence to come out around it, and really interested to see how it kind of adapts a bit more. I've got a few ideas that I think could be really cool in the future. But yeah, I just think one of the things that frustrates me is, I think sometimes with technology, we just kind of automatically alienate it because it's scary and new, and it would be cool to sort of see us lean into it a little bit more, because I think if we lent into it a lot more, we could actually exploit it to really, really help people in more ways than we do at the moment, and reach more people.
Yeah, and I guess have mixed models and perhaps provide a range of different things that we haven't done to date. I mean, the moment it's groups, it's counselling, and it's some medication. Things that we can be doing.
Like imagine if you could have someone come into us, and this is very city centric. Like, a lot of rural people get left out. They don't even have internet connection that reaches them with a lot of this stuff. But anyway, imagine if you could have someone come in for service, do like the normal program that they're doing, but then they have like a free app that is on their phone that checks in with them. Like, voice is starting to come up. They've kind of got like an Iron Man personal assistant being like reminding them. Maybe there's like a text message service that comes along with it, just to kind of remind them to do different things for their health and well-being, and then you could really create a intensive support model that wasn't too invasive as well, and people felt comfortable. So
it's the anonymity, I think, that can be.
That's right.
For many of us, I mean, you mentioned that before, that people feel. For some people, it's less of a barrier to come forward to a machine or a robot.
But for some people, it's really weird. Me included, I find it a bit weird sometimes. Yeah.
And also, you started this with, for you, the power of people's personal experience and of lived experience, and how that helped you navigate your way at that time. So I think we can't lose connection with each other.
100%.
Of what we're doing, really.
100%. I definitely. So I'm just to, I guess, clarify. I'm 100% for technology and advancing it, but never to lose the face-to-face stuff, because that makes all the difference, I think. Anyway.
Excellent. All right, we're right on 2:30. I want to thank you so much, Jack, for this really fascinating conversation with you, and I hope we can have some more conversations into the future. And good luck with your work. It's really great that you're providing connections with people at this time.
No worries. Thanks.
And
Thanks for having me.
all right, bye.
Cheers.